Trev's Hockey Show. I'm the Trev. That's too sweet. Anyway, continuing on with retired numbers, and today we're not only talking about the third number retired by the New Jersey Devils, but we're also starting another two-parter. Now, I can guarantee you this particular two-parter will be done a lot sooner compared to some of the part ones we've already talked about, which, we will get there at some point. But anyways, with today's topic, I honestly believe there's not even a Stanley Cup win in New Jersey without. Sure, they had a lot of the right players at the right time, but without today's topic, I honestly don't think their success measures up. And today, we're going to talk about my favorite number, number 27, which is worn by Scott Niedermayer. Let's talk about it. Alright, so Scott Niedermayer's 13 seasons with the New Jersey Devils began on June 22nd, 1991. That was when Niedermayer was drafted 3rd overall by the New Jersey Devils in the 1991 NHL entry draft. Now, funnily enough, this pick was traded to New Jersey from the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1989 for Tom Kurvers. Now, it's funny to think what could have been if Toronto just held on to this pick. Now, Niedermayer would go on to play 4 games during the 91-92 season, and that was more just a get-to-break-you-in kind of thing done by the Devils. But he did get his first NHL assist in his first game on October 16th, 1991, against the New York Rangers, before being sent back down to juniors. Now, Niedermayer would find a full-time spot with the New Jersey Devils, starting in the 92-93 season, and would score his first NHL goal on November 8th, 1992, against the San Jose Sharks. Now, all told, Niedermayer would add 40 points in 80 games. And even got to experience some playoff hockey in his rookie year. However, Devils would run into the powerhouse that was the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champs in the Pittsburgh Penguins, and, it went as one would expect it to go, as Niedermayer would contribute 3 assists in 5 games. Now, it wasn't all bad of a rookie year, and thanks to his production during this year, Niedermayer would be named to the NHL's all-rookie team. So, not a bad accolade to have in the first year. The 93-94 season would really see the defense in New Jersey just really start to gel. Of course, Niedermayer was a big reason for that, but, having a Scott Stevens or, even a Ken Danico in the lineup, who we've discussed previously, and a Martin Brodeur in the net, who we will discuss eventually, really starting to come into his own, and it's not hard to understand why. The Devils would finish 2nd in the Atlantic Division, with Niedermayer adding 46 points in 81 games. And the playoffs would almost be a near-perfect run. First they eliminated the Buffalo Sabres in 7 games, before eliminating the Boston Bruins in 6 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. So that set us all up for, the playoff edition of the Hudson River rivalry, when they faced the New York Rangers. The series was neat in that it started and ended in double overtime. There are 3 double overtimes in this series, and unfortunately 2 of them were won by the Rangers. And even more unfortunate was that it also included the 2-1 double overtime Game 7 loss, which saw the Rangers on their way to the first Stanley Cup win in 54 years. Now, Niedermayer would add 4 points in 20 games, and a truly bitter way to end the season. But then we had a lockout. Now, the first NHL lockout lasted for about 3 months and made the 94-95 season shorter to the 48-game point schedule for all teams, and the Devils seemed to pick right up where they left right off, again finishing 2nd in the Atlantic Division, with Niedermayer adding 19 points in a full 48-game schedule. Now, in the playoffs, the Devils made short work of the Boston Bruins, eliminating them in 5 games. Then beat the Penguins in 5 games. Now, in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Devils have faced their toughest challenge in the Philadelphia Flyers, but ended up eliminating the Flyers in 6, on their way to the first Stanley Cup Finals in team history. Now, while most teams would be considered an underdog, going up against not just the President's Trophy champs, but also the Western Conference champs and the heavily favored Detroit Red Wings. And, well, I'm not going to lie, they were the underdogs. But the Devils made it look incredibly easy, holding the Detroit Red Wings to only 8 goals in 4 games to win the franchise's first Stanley Cup in team history. Niedermayer would add 11 points in 20 games. So 3 years in, and he's already a Stanley Cup champ. Nice. But for all the positives that came out of the 94-95 season, the 95-96 season would be a step in the opposite direction. Now, the Devils did have a strong start to the season, but thanks to a brief 2-month spell of where they were losing more than they were winning, the Devils found themselves pushing for a playoff spot for the remainder of the season. And you got to give them the A for effort, but it was ultimately 2 points too short, as the Devils would be the first team since 1970 to miss the playoffs the year following a Stanley Cup win. Tough pill to swallow. But for Niedermayer, it was a solid step forward in terms of point production, putting up 33 points in 81 games. And for the record, this would be the only time with Niedermayer in the lineup, full-time, that the Devils would miss the playoffs. The 96-97 season would see the Devils right the ship and get back to being the same winning team they were from 2 to 3 years ago. And the Devils would finish first in the Atlantic and first in the Eastern Conference, while allowing the fewest goals amongst the league at 182. Now that's just solid defense. Pure and simple. Niedermayer would add 35 points in 81 games. In the playoffs, the Devils were amongst the favorites to make a deep Stanley Cup run, and looked like they were on the way, being first by eliminating the Montreal Canadiens in 5 games, before being eliminated by the New York Rangers in 5. So they got back. That was the important thing. Now Niedermayer would add 6 points in 10 games. The 97-98 season would see Scott Niedermayer be named an alternate captain for the New Jersey Devils. And one would say that was rightfully deserved. He also played his first of 3 NHL All-Star games as a New Jersey Devil. And as for the team, well, they managed to allow a league-low 166 goals. Thanks really in large part to Niedermayer and Stevens on their way to another Atlantic Division championship, with Niedermayer contributing his best offensive output in New Jersey with 57 points, which was good enough for second in team scoring. And again, with the Devils finishing first in the Atlantic and in the Eastern Conference, they were again heavily favored to go on a deep playoff run. However, they would find themselves out in 6 games against the Ottawa Senators, with Niedermayer contributing only 2 assists. But it wasn't all bad, as Niedermayer would be named to the NHL's second NHL All-Star team at the end of the season. So, yeah, that's your resume. That was the only one of his career, by the way. The 98-99 season would see Niedermayer miss the first 10 games due to a contract dispute, but he would make his comeback, and even added his first and only penalty shot goal of his career, doing so on November 11th, 1998, against the Montreal Canadiens. Now, the Devils would again finish first in the Atlantic Division, and again first in the Eastern Conference, with Niedermayer scoring 46 points in those 72 games. And again, the Devils were favored to make a deep playoff run, and the Devils would again be eliminated in the quarterfinals, this time in 7 games against the Pittsburgh Penguins, with Niedermayer contributing 4 points. The 99-2000 season would be a nice breakaway from the last 3 years. Now, firstly, the Devils finished second in the Atlantic Division, as well as changed coaches in the last month of the season. So, weird things can happen before the playoffs start. Niedermayer would add 38 points in 71 games. Now, in the playoffs, the Devils swept past the Florida Panthers in the quarterfinals. Then the Maple Leafs were out in 6 before meeting the Philadelphia Flyers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, the last time these two met in a conference finals, the Devils won in 6, but that was also 5 years ago. And after falling behind 3-1 in the series, the Devils managed to make the last 3 games count and eliminated the Flyers in 7 games to advance the Stanley Cup Finals for the second time in 5 years. This year, however, it was the Devils facing against the defending Stanley Cup champs in the Dallas Stars. And after a goal-filled Game 1, the Devils and the Stars managed to stay 1 goal close to each other for the rest of the series, with Game 5 turning out to be a Stars triple overtime shutout win. The Devils managed to do one better, and with their second Stanley Cup in franchise history, winning it in double overtime in Game 6, giving Niedermayer his second Stanley Cup while contributing 7 points in 22 games, including a career high 5 goals. So what's better than 1 cup? Well, how about 2? Now, the 2000-2001 season would see Niedermayer miss the first 25 games of the season, now again due to a contract dispute. But with Niedermayer and the Devils, they would sort it all out, and as the Devils were in defense/repeat mode, it was pretty much back to business with the Devils, as they'd finished first in the Atlantic and the Eastern Conference again, with Niedermayer adding 35 points in 57 games. And the playoffs should have been a quick walk to the Cup, and for the most part they kind of were. First, I eliminated the Carolina Hurricanes in 6 games, before going a full 7 games, which included 2 overtime games with the Toronto Maple Leafs, en route to facing a returning Mario Lemieux and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And even with Mario in the lineup, the Devils managed to hold the Penguins to 7 goals and eliminated them in 5 games for the team's third trip to the Stanley Cup Finals in 6 years. For the Devils, though, they would eventually run into the Colorado Avalanche, who on their own 16W mission run, and despite keeping the series close, they just couldn't get past Ray Bourque or Patrick Waugh, and would lose the Stanley Cup in 7 games, with Niedermayer adding 6 assists in 21 playoff games. The 2001-2002 season would see the Devils finish 3rd in the Atlantic Division, which is very uncharacteristic of them, one would say, with Niedermayer adding 33 points in 76 games. The Devils would make the playoffs, but they would eventually be eliminated in the first 6 games in the Stanley Cup quarterfinals against the eventual Stanley Cup finalists, the Carolina Hurricanes, with Niedermayer adding 2 assists in those 6 games. The 2002-2003 season was the Devils show again why they were one of, if not the best defenses in the league, having a league tie with the Flyers for fewest goals against with 166. Now, they also finished first in the Atlantic, with Niedermayer adding 39 points in 81 games. Now, the playoffs started off pretty quickly, with the Devils eliminating the Boston Bruins in 5 games, then the Tampa Bay Lightning in a triple OT Game 5 win to meet the Ottawa Senators in the Eastern Conference Finals. And while the Senators did make that push, they just couldn't keep the Devils down, and they'd eliminate Ottawa in 7 on their way to the Stanley Cup for the 4th time in 8 years. Now, this finals was pretty much unique, as it was won against the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. Kind of ironic foreshadowing, but it was also Scott Niedermayer playing against his brother Rob Niedermayer. Again, kind of ironic foreshadowing. Now, for the record, this was a great series, and would also be a good back and forth 7-game series with 2 overtime games and 3 shutouts, as the New Jersey Devils would win their Stanley Cup for the 3rd time in 4 trips, with Niedermayer putting up career highs in playoff assists with 16 and playoff points with 18 in a career high 24 games. Now, what's better than 2 cups? Well, 3, of course. Now, the 2003-2004 season would be Niedermayer's last season in New Jersey, and thanks to injuries to Scott Stevens and Brian Rafalski, Niedermayer would be named captain of the New Jersey Devils in 2004. And also see him play in his 3rd and last All-Star game in New Jersey. And despite being down 2 key defensemen, Niedermayer would manage to help the Devils to a modern-day low of 164 goals allowed, while also recording 14 shutouts. Now, Niedermayer also managed to have a great season of his own, contributing 54 points in 81 games. Now, the Devils would again make the playoffs, but they'd be quickly eliminated in 5 games against the Philadelphia Flyers, with Niedermayer only contributing 1 goal. But it wasn't a terrible season for Scott Niedermayer, as he'd be named to the first NHL All-Star team for the first time in his career. And he'd also be awarded the James Norris Memorial Trophy for Best Defenseman in the NHL for the 2003-2004 season. So, not a bad season, even if he didn't add another cup to it. Now, at the end of the season, Niedermayer would be awarded, through arbitration, a significantly better contract, as he had expired his contract with the team at the end of the season. But thanks to the big one, that contract that he was just awarded has essentially been nullified. So when the NHL did come back for the 05-06 season, Niedermayer found himself in free agency, listening to as many as 14 different teams before he took his talents to Orange County on August 4th of 2005. And that's pretty much the end of part 1. And let's talk numbers. Alright, so in 892 games played, he scored 112 goals, added 364 assists for 476 points. Now in the playoffs, he played 146 games, scoring 17 goals and adding 47 assists to make it 64 points. 3 NHL All-Star games in New Jersey in 1998, 2001, and 2004. He was named to the 1993 NHL All-Rookie team. He was a 2004 first-team NHL All-Star and a 1998 second-team NHL All-Star. So not too shabby. He won the 2004 James Norris Memorial Trophy, but more importantly, he's a 3-time Stanley Cup champ with the New Jersey Devils, doing so in 95, 2000, and 2003. He was named to the NHL Hockey Hall of Fame in 2013, and is also named one of the NHL's 100 greatest players during their centennial season. On top of that, he has a number retired in New Jersey on December 16th, 2011. So, here's my opinion on the guy. Now, this guy, Scott Niedermayer, a defenseman's defenseman. I mean, he wasn't the most offensive guy. I mean, yeah, he had 2 50-point outbursts in New Jersey, but when he had to play defense, he played defense, and it showed. I mean, just look at the ascension of Martin Brodeur. Brodeur would not be half as good if it wasn't for the fact he had not just a Scott Stevens, but a Scott Niedermayer on the blue line. Definitely helped him out. I mean, how many times below 200 were the New Jersey Devils throughout the 90s to 2000s? I named off 3. I'm pretty sure there's at least 4 or 5 where they had a goals against less than 200. He's just as important to the Devils' 3 Stanley Cup wins as a Scott Stevens or a Martin Brodeur. So, as I said in the beginning, I don't think their success parallels if he's not on the team. So, for the Maple Leafs, if you thought Lamoriello was a dummy and you're just giving up a 3rd overall pick, didn't work out for you. But hey, that was the breaks, right? So this is the part 1. And again, part 2 should not take me long. Part 2 is actually more or less just the end of the career. So look for that one to come fairly soon. So that's another one of them Trev's hockey shows. I want to thank you for tuning in. Don't think I don't appreciate the gesture, especially if you've tuned into this point. And if you have tuned into this point, just know that I'm incredibly thankful. I mean, we've hit 260. We were at 250 not too long ago. We hit 260 in less than a week. So thank you very much to everybody who's jumped on. Know that I am very grateful, and I do appreciate it very, very much. I thank you. My algorithm thanks you, and I'm glad we're all feeling good about it. So let's keep this train going. We're on the way to 500. Let's see if we can do that up sooner rather than later. If you want to, that link to my Facebook, it's in the description down below. Let's move forward. Well, as I said, there's a number 2
to this one, but I think I'll do at least a jersey or two more before I do that one. But either way, in the meantime, and in between time, be looking for more videos from Trev. Later.